Hello, hello.
Hey everybody.
Welcome. Hello. Again.
Yes.
Another fun night.
Yeah.
Yes.
I hope so.
We are going to stream games at some point.
Yeah, we'll get there. We will get there.
Something we should define right now. What does game ledger mean? So the audience knows.
What does it actually mean, or what do we think it means?
What do we think it means?
Go ahead, Lance.
Is there it?
Well, the whole point, the whole reason why I wanted to do this, or the reason why I bought game ledgers, a ledger in the modern sense is an accounting of money and all that kind of stuff. But what it originally started out was a public place where people could go to see the events that were taking place in town. It was public, normally a church, and they could go and they could see who had had their babies and who had done this and who had done that. And so my idea behind Game Ledger was a place to discuss the going-ons of the gaming community, a place where people could come and talk about events that had happened in the past, upcoming events, all those kinds of things, and to talk about the community as a whole, because that's really what the Ledger came to be in these communities, was a place where people could gather and they could talk about the going-ons of their community. And so that's what Game Ledger is a meeting place to talk about games.
And I like that you talk a lot about community, because that's really what it boils down to. Like, as we were discussing starting this show up, we talked a lot about, well, what do we do? Every time we meet up together, we always end up talking about video games in some aspect. And so we realize that it's something that we love and we want to discuss it. We love talking about it. We love sharing it. Mm-hmm. So we just, I guess, took that extra step, and this is what we like to do. And that's why we're here.
And I think for us, we're new to the Twitch community, but that's what it is we're joining the Twitch community by offering, offering ourselves in and of itself. So.
Yeah, for what it's worth.
Yeah, for what it's worth. Thank you. Alrighty. Well, should we go over what we have already?
Yeah. So we've been talking about our top, not our top 50, but 50 games that we think people should have a basic knowledge of.
Yes.
Gamers should have a knowledge of, and hopefully should have played. To make up their gaming background. So.
I was reading a really interesting thread on True Gaming on Reddit. I don't know if you guys follow the True Gaming subreddit, but shout out to them. They were talking about archiving games. How are games going to be archived? How are people going to play the games that came out in 1980, 100 years from now? How are those going to be preserved? And there was a lot of discussion about digital archiving and keeping the carts and all of that kind of stuff, and magnetic film, and some pretty intense archiving discussion going on. And as I was reading the comments, I was thinking, I really think that the way that these games are going to be preserved is similar to the way that our stories are preserved, similar that literature has been preserved. You think about Beowulf, or you think about the Iliad and the Odyssey. Those were experiences that were shared, in communities and shared over time with people just by word of mouth, and people talked about this story that they had heard. And I think that's probably what the 50 games that we're talking about is preserving that experience, that communal experience of playing these games, because who knows if they're going to be available in 200 years.
Yeah.
Good point. Although we do know that for what it's worth, what is it? Internet Archive or archive.org, I think it is.
Yeah.
They have just put on 5,600 DOS games.
Yes,
I think
that's
close to the best of all that DOS provided. So I think it's a matter of time before we see Myst on there. We see really old games. We also have GOG.com,
right.
goodoldgames.com. Obviously for the PC gamers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's an interesting topic, but I definitely feel like there is some sort of stability happening for longevity.
I think people are definitely bringing it to the forefront as something that we need to worry about. But like even the Atari games and all those, how long are those going to be around? I mean, there's definitely been a resurgence in collecting games just in the past 4 or 5 years, people have really started saying this is something that's worth collecting.
You know, but like with anything, you know, the technology breaks down. However,
Yeah, exactly.
you know, the Atari cartridges, the Nintendo cartridges, you know, even on up to the you know, the Blu-rays and DVDs that we have now, it degrades over time. I mean, yeah, I guess the argument could be made everything's digital, you know, going up into the cloud and stuff like that.
Right.
But how long-lasting is that, you know?
Yeah.
How do we preserve that for X amount of years?
Yeah, exactly. And even beyond that, you know, are these games going to have to be constantly remade in order to be able to be played on newer and newer technology?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you think of I'm playing NES ROMs on my iPad. You know, really wasn't meant for that. But you'd have to hack it. You have to do some other way of being able to access that information on newer and newer technology. And who knows what technology is going to look like 200 years from now? I mean,
you know, and you mentioned, you know, remaking games. Like, you know, PlayStation Network just released not just released, but last month you know, DuckTales Remastered HD. Great game, but when you play it, is it the same game?
Yeah,
because it doesn't have the, you know, it's updated graphics, HD graphics, which are great,
and updated
and it brings
music.
a lot to it. It looks like you're playing a good you know, episode of the cartoon.
Yes.
You know, but you kind of miss those old days with the old 8-bit graphics, the 8-bit,
exactly.
you know, music.
Exactly. And it changes the experience for
So,
sure.
yeah, so, I mean, yeah, it's the same game, same story, same levels, things like that, but is it the same game?
Is it?
You know,
Yeah.
I don't know,
question.
it's just an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah, I think on the side of will we be playing games over and over again? You know, I think our show is literally a testament to that. You know, we're nostalgic about these games, but we would also go back and play them again and again.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, when I chose them, I was like, I'm gonna play this. I would play this again.
Yeah.
And if I didn't, you know, my last time I played it and it wasn't fun, I didn't go on my list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
So, alrighty.
Okay.
So the games we talked about last time,
We ended with... Did we end with Dark Souls?
We ended with Dark Souls.
Cool.
We did.
So who would like to... Should we just go ahead?
Jonathan to start.
Okay.
Mine. Alrighty.
Shout out to Infinity Emperor. Audio is a lot better. That's because we bought a mic.
Yes, we did.
Hopefully
So-
the stream's a little more stable as well.
Yes.
You know, never can tell with that.
Cool.
Alrighty. Just trying to think here. Which one would I want to suggest? You know, I'm going to go with a classic. Absolute classic. But it is a first-person shooter. And I think every gamer, at least in our age bracket, has at least
I think
played
I know
it.
where it's headed.
Yeah.
It was made when I was 3 years old, or 4. Maybe it wasn't. I'm not actually sure when the true date was, but I think it was released in '89. Doom 1 is the one I'm going to add to our list. It for obvious reasons, you know. Although I'm sure some would attest to 2 being a better Doom game.
Yeah.
But I think
I would
Doom-
agree with that. You know, they added more to it.
You know, but Doom 1, which in itself is a improvement on Wolfenstein 3D,
Oh, yeah, good point.
you know. But which one's the better game, you know? But I would say Doom is a good place to start, you know, because, you know, it really started mastering the controls and what a first-person shooter could be. And, you know, was there any type of first-person shooters before that?
Not that I can
That we
remember.
can think of?
I mean, I think
remember
Wolfenstein
Wolfenstein.
3D and Doom, they came out pretty close to each other, both by id Software.
Yeah, they're both by the same company.
Um,
I think I could be wrong, but I think Doom is just an improved
version of Wolfenstein.
version of Wolfenstein 3D.
Well, and Wolfenstein 3D was fairly limited in its map. I mean, you were exploring the castle, and that was
Right.
pretty much all you could do.
Right.
Although Spear of Destiny
It did a lot more with
added a
with
lot
it,
more
yeah.
to it. No, I think Doom. You know, I remember Mr. Waite in 8th grade let us play Doom if we finished our typing exercises. fast.
Mr. Waite.
And
That is pretty neat.
You know, and I remember one of the projects that Mr. Waite did. You know, we went to the same junior high, obviously. You know, so one of the, I guess, term projects that we do is we could build a level in Doom.
build a
Doom
level in
editor,
Doom.
You know,
Yeah.
and that was a really fun experience. It was one of the only experiences, you know, I don't do any type of coding or anything like that, but I remember doing that, and I am learning a lot about how the systems work, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it, And yeah, I remember you get done with your work and
Play Doom. Have a classroom of people playing Doom.
4-player deathmatch, and
Yeah, for sure.
in the middle of school.
That's where
You
I
know.
developed one of my first crutches. Was on a girl that was playing Doom with me.
Was she beating you?
Of course she
Of
was.
course.
I'm
You
like,
know-
I'm gonna develop a crush on a girl that can't beat me.
And I guess I'm kind of gonna go off on a tangent here, but I remember around that same time, I remember another big game that came up while playing Doom was Rise of the Triad.
Yes,
And
that was such an awesome game. I
think-
feel like it's kind of underrated.
it is underrated. It had a lot of stuff going for it.
It did have
you could
a lot.
look up and down.
Yeah.
You could dual wield your weapons and stuff like that. It was a much
And
quicker
there were
paced
power-ups,
shooter
too.
game. Yeah, there's these strange power ups.
Yeah.
God mode was literally God mode. It was your hand out in front of you, shooting orbs and fireballs, and your character was all of a sudden taller than he used to be.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was a really interesting game, a lot of fun to play. And I think it might have even been I think when it started out, it was going to be a sequel to Wolfenstein 3D, if I'm remembering my history right. But then something with the rights, and so they went ahead, whatever they had started doing, they went in a completely different direction and made into Rise of the Triad, because you still got the Nazi-esque enemies that you're fighting and
there
stuff like
were.
that. It has some type of connection to Wolfenstein. I know that. I just can't remember clearly
What it was? Yeah, I can't remember either,
Yeah.
but definitely Doom. I do think Doom 2 was the better game.
Yeah.
They improved on it. I mean, they added the BFF gun. Isn't that what it was called?
I think that
BFG,
was in
but
the
that was in
second
Doom
first
1.
one.
Was it in?
Yeah,
They added the
first one?
super shotgun,
The
the
super-
double-barreled
That's
shotgun.
right.
That was the
Yeah.
weapon added.
And the chainsaw. Was the chainsaw?
No, the
Yeah,
chainsaw was
the
in
chainsaw
one?
was in there in one.
One.
Was it in the first one?
Yeah.
I just remember thinking that was.
Yeah.
It's another one of those games that I kind of felt like I shouldn't be playing, like kind of like Diablo.
Yeah.
And at school, definitely
Yeah,
should not
and
be
it's
playing this at
not
school.
only at school, but in class.
Yeah, in
during
class.
time.
During class
we
time.
were playing Doom.
We were playing Doom.
That would not.
Yeah,
It wouldn't fly today at all.
for sure. No. Although there are schools that use Warcraft to teach economy.
Yeah.
Really?
I mean,
That-
it's not unheard of, but definitely not. I can't see them, playing. I don't even know. Like the graphics and the graphic nature of Doom today would be like playing
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat or something. I don't know what it would be, but
Yeah. Well, there is a new Doom game in the works.
is there?
Yeah, Doom
It's a reboot.
4.
They dropped the 4 from the
They
title.
did.
Now it's just called Doom.
Wow. I personally wrote to them when they said buy the latest Wolfenstein you'll get in the beta, and it was
That's
there was
right.
no gameplay, there was nothing,
That's right.
and it was a total. In my personal view, I
remember
thought
that.
it was a
Yeah,
scam.
because I bought Wolfenstein,
Did you?
and I got really excited playing Wolfenstein because I love the series that I
Uh-huh.
completely forgot about that it came with the Doom beta.
Hey,
So
you'll have to break that one out.
maybe I'll have to look into that.
Yeah, well, who knows when that's going to come out, but I'm hyped. I don't know. It seems like fresh eyes, and I think fresh eyes, talking about first-person shooters, or sort of, goes to the new game Just Cause 4 that we just got kind of a mini CGI trailer today, or was it yesterday? Do you guys remember Just Cause?
Yeah.
I've heard of the series, but I've never played it.
Yeah, third person and everything. But I was reading about it, and they said that we just needed fresh eyes on it. We think it's really, really turned around from where 3 was, and it's coming together.
Okay.
So I'm kind of hyped
Interesting.
about that one now because Doom could potentially have that same fallout.
Right.
So
Kind of in that same genre, though, Duke Nukem 3D.
Oh yeah.
Which is such a change from the original Duke Nukem games. Because I remember playing Duke Nukem
And it was
games, and they were
side-scrolling,
cool,
it was
and it was like
very-
very Commander Keen, which are another series of great
Yeah.
games. But
Yeah.
Duke Nukem 3D, I remember playing that game, and it seems like Duke Nukem 3D was maybe like 3 or 4 years later. But
Yeah, it seemed a little bit right. What was it? It was 3D Realms
yeah,
that did Duke Nukem, and it was a great game. Like they just released that game on PlayStation Network too
oh really?
for free.
And-
Oh wow!
For PS Plus owners.
and for PC, they released a whole thing. You could get the whole catalog.
Yeah, it's like
exciting.
it's like all the episodes plus the DLC that was
Right.
released.
Right.
And like it's the entire package there.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a lot of fun, And I've been playing it with my brother you know, because that was another game we kind of grew up on, and it got us talking about that game because there's another game that came out. It was by 3D Realms, and it played very similar to Duke Nukem. It had the same kind of sense of, you know, the sense of humor, you know, and the stuff. But it was good. It was Shadow Warrior.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
You know, and it was more of a terrible stereotype of you know, Japanese and ninjas and stuff like that. But it was a shooter, you know, and stuff like that. But it had the same stupid humor as Duke Nukem. Well, they remade Shadow Warrior for the PS4 as a downloadable title, and it was a lot of fun. And it just got me and my brother talking about how terrible Duke Nukem Forever was when it finally released after so many years of being promised, and it came out and it was a piece of crap.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what it was, but Duke Nukem, it wasn't funny, it wasn't, you know, it was just a waste of time. You know, and my brother was kind of lamenting the fact that it would be nice to see a newer Duke Nukem game. But with what Forever did with the franchise, I think we've seen the last of Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of sad, but at the same time, you know, if you screw up the property, then you don't have the goodwill of the gamers supporting you anymore.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. They lost the community.
Yeah.
I bet they might be a Duke Nukem.
There might be, you know, I mean...
10 years down the road.
Yeah, when people have forgotten about it.
Yeah.
But,
when they lick their wounds.
The Shadow Warrior remake on PS4 is really fun.
I'll have to check it out.
Really cool. Hyper-violent.
Hyper-violent. Awesome.
Cool.
My turn?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go with Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah. That's a good choice.
Yes. So I mean the first game by Team Ico. Ico?
Eco.
Eco? It was Eco. That was the game.
Yeah, it was Eco.
And that was a fascinating game. And one day when we do a game theory show, we will definitely talk about the connection between Shadow of the Colossus and Ico.
Yeah.
But Shadow of the Colossus, of those two games, because they're both very atmospheric. They're very heavy on story, without really explaining anything. Right. The Tale of the Wanderer in Shadow of the Colossus, and just the gameplay, and it's all just boss fights and everything, and the sheer majesty of that game.
Well, and they're not just boss fights; like they're epic boss fights.
They are epic boss fights.
It feels like you're doing something spectacular.
Yeah, for sure. When you take them down, you feel like, well, it's kind of.
It's a weird feeling.
Bittersweet, because it's like, I just defeated this amazing monster, but at the same time, I just defeated an amazing monster.
Yeah, yeah. So you get that rush, you know, of defeating this huge enemy, but then you feel kind of a weird sadness setting because you're like, why, you know, this thing is just walking around out here. I attacked it. You know,
it wasn't hurting.
It wasn't doing anything. It's the only thing in this world of these big colossi.
Yeah.
You know, stumbling around, and then, so yeah, I mean, and that's the point of the game.
Exactly. And you're trying to revive your love, and kind of like the whole. It really makes you question why you're doing it. Mm-hmm. And they released the HD version for the was it for the PS4?
No, PS3.
Which
and it was
just
in
made
the
it
collection.
Look even, it did. It had Eco and Shadow of the Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the third game, hopefully, which I'm so excited about.
Very
I don't
hopeful.
know if it's ever going to come out, but
The Last Guardian. Yeah.
I think it's going to be an amazing game,
and it was supposed to come out on the PS3.
It was, yeah. They announced it, and they even did a gameplay trailer for it, and it looked amazing.
Was it CGI or gameplay?
It was CGI. It was a trailer for it. Mm-hmm. But yeah, Shadow of the Colossus. I don't know. There's something about that game. I could play it over and over and over. It has infinite replayability to me because there's so many different. You know, the one boss where you're fighting in the water.
Yeah.
And everything is just so amazing the way they did that, because it was really just about one really simple mechanic. You find a weak spot and exploit it. Mm-hmm. And that's the entire game.
Well, and each boss fight was a puzzle in itself.
Exactly.
You had to figure out how to climb it. You had to figure out where the weak spots were. Some of them had multiple weak spots.
Yeah.
So what's some of the spawns of that game that maybe we've seen recently?
I don't think
maybe?
there
I don't
is
think there
one.
really is.
There's not.
So it's a unique title?
It is a very unique title.
Yeah. I've never heard of it.
There's not a lot like it.
And
no, I've heard of
cover,
it.
I mean, the game art, the box art for it was
mm-hmm.
awesome. Because you have your little guy, and he's looking up at this guardian when you you play the game, you realize, oh my gosh, these are the people that I'm killing. Just such an awesome game, and I think a landmark game. Before that, there wasn't any the fact that nobody's been able to copy it is also a big testament to how awesome
and
game is.
It's one of those games that is constantly brought up in the discussion of should games be considered art.
Exactly.
And that's one of the games that people always point to, and rightly so.
Yeah. And it is telling a story, but at the same time it's not telling a story, right? We don't know any of the history of this person. We don't know the relationship. Is it his wife? Is it his girlfriend? Is it his sister? We don't know. I mean, there's nothing told to us explicitly in that game, and yet it still is able to craft this amazing experience from it.
Right.
It's a really, really good game.
Definitely.
Cool. Definitely one everyone should check out.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
23.
Okay. I chose Oblivion. And so I know we're going to talk about the Elder Scrolls.
Yes.
We all have our favorites.
Should we say for our list the series?
I'd like to say the series, but I've never played Arena. I've never played Daggerfall. My experience is Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim.
Right. If you include, I'm going to put a caveat on the series, not the MMO.
No.
Oh yes,
the actual Elder Scrolls numbered series. Yes,
1 through 5.
The interesting thing about Daggerfall is that it's, of all of the games, it's the biggest.
Well, yeah. What is it? The in-game map is the size of Great Britain.
Yeah,
isn't that what
it's
they
massive.
stated?
It is massive.
It's crazy big.
And
but at the same time, there's not a lot going on.
No, there's not.
It's a lot of recycled.
But it was also a DOS. It was a DOS game.
It was a very early game, so.
And Arena, I think Arena was interesting, but it was really more focused on the fighting than it was the exploration and open world. They kind of added more of that into Daggerfall. I think Morrowind is the first true Elder Scrolls game. When we think of Elder Scrolls game, that's the first one that really embraces all of the tropes.
It has that Elder Scrolls feeling,
But you talk about Oblivion.
Okay, I chose Oblivion. It was my first foray into the series. One of the first games I bought on my PS3, and I just remember playing it for hours. Constantly, days, weeks. I fell in love with the game. I did everything I could. I completed every single quest line in it, every side quest, and I would, on the PS3, there's a weird bug with if you're a vampire and you try to go heal yourself. There's a bug in the game that doesn't let you complete that quest, and it always irritated me so much. The completionist in me, it irritated me that I could do everything else except because of this one stupid bug, I couldn't revert back from vampire form. But that aside, it was a good indication of how you can get caught up in a game. And I've gotten caught up in games before, and so it wasn't a new experience for me, but it was more of a reassurance of why I love games.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the storyline is, who cares about the storyline? It's an Elder Scrolls game.
Yeah.
You get lost going into random caves and exploring on your own, and you end up doing that for the entire game. And a lot of people don't even finish the main storyline. And
I haven't finished the storyline in Skyrim. And I don't know, I've probably put 200 hours into that game.
Yeah.
I don't know what the main storyline, how it ends. Yeah. I assume you kill Anduin, but I don't know. Yeah. Oblivion is up there. My favorite is Morrowind. And it wasn't my first. My first one was Oblivion. And then Skyrim, and then I went back and played Morrowind. And having played all of them, even though it's the older game, I feel like that sense of being in an alien world, being somewhere other than Earth. Oblivion and Skyrim, they have elements of, otherworldliness, but Morrowind just because, like the Striders and, everything from the moment you step off that ship, it's like, this is not Earth. And I think for the most part, Morrowind is the one that just completely lets you do whatever you want. In Skyrim, there's where you're going to get your head chopped off, and the dragon stops you, and you're kind of like, what's going on with the dragon? And it kind of leads you in a certain way. And even with Oblivion, you're trying to save the heir, and everything. And Morrowind is just kind of like, yeah, there's a city over there, but whatever. And I think that's what I love about that game so much is there really is no push in any one direction with Morrowind, and that's what I really love about Elder Scrolls games.
Yeah. I was going to say something about it, but I lost my train of thought.
For me, Skyrim was the only one I played, probably because it was the prettiest and newest when I first got introduced. But Skyrim made me want. I never finished it, but it made me want to go back and try the other two.
4.
The other two good-looking ones. So, anyways, that's kind of like where I was at.
Yeah.
It was kind of pivotal for me to get into the genre. And I think a lot of people are waiting for the next one instead of going back. So it's good to hear that going back is not a bad thing.
No,
I don't think. I think the games have aged fairly well. I mean, the graphics are not up to par, obviously. You can tell it's an old game. There's mods that you can get for it to make Morrowind HD. I mean, I played it on my 4K TV and it looked really good. And so I don't think they're as aged as say going back and playing Daggerfall. Obviously, that's a DOS game. But the really sad part is it's like you look, okay, they went the MMO route. Are they going to come out with Elder Scrolls 6?
I hope so.
I hope so too. But when was the last time there was any talk of Warcraft 4?
Exactly, and that's my lament.
Yeah, I mean, but at the same time, you say, okay, well, Final Fantasy 14 was an online game, and we're still getting Final Fantasy 15, which is not online. So, I mean, there are success stories past the MMO, right? Final Fantasy 11 was on MMO, and Final Fantasy 12 is one of my favorite games. So, I mean, there are success stories where they've moved past the MMO, but sorry, I was reading chat. I don't know. There hasn't ever been talk of Elder Scrolls 6 from Bethesda. They seem to be really kind of delving into these new IPs. So like Dishonored,
right?
And it's going really well for them. So
they're doing good stuff.
I hope we see an Elder Scrolls 6.
I will say that I want to hear what your favorite quest lines is.
I mean,
mine goes back to Oblivion. I love the Dark Brotherhood quest line.
How can you beat the Dark Brotherhood quest line?
And I love the Thieves Guild quest line.
Thieves Guild is also good.
In Oblivion.
I really loved the vampire quest line in Skyrim, where you became the vampire with Harkin and all of those.
Yeah,
I thought that one
Dawnfall. Dawnguard.
That was the opposite side of it, right? You could become part of the Dawnguard, or you could become a vampire.
Yeah.
And I thought the vampire part where you were searching for the lost Elder Scroll and everything, I thought it was really, really done well.
It was a lot of fun.
Dark Brotherhood. It's the first thing I do when I start an Elder Scrolls
game. You figure out how to join the Dark Brotherhood.
How to join the Dark Brotherhood, for sure.
You look for the Black Hand.
Yeah. Exactly. So.
Well, we need to do a shout out for Riley One. He's back with us.
Right on.
All right.
So welcome back. So cool.
Very cool.
Alrighty, so we are on to 24, and I think it's my turn with that one. I'm gonna have to go with. Ooh, man. I'm gonna have to go with Mario Kart. I think.
Which Mario Kart?
Well, I think the series holds up in and of itself. Every one of them, in its time, was perfect. Even the new one trumps everything else, right? I haven't personally played it, but I know so much about it.
What is it, 8?
8. Mario Kart.
Is it 8? Yeah. So anyways, I think that is one that generational gaps are good in that you really can't pick a favorite because it's mainly the same concept, mainly the same thing, arguably, of course. So, but my favorite, meaning the one that I grew up on, was the 64 version. I loved it. Loved it.
On.
Yeah, I mean, that's my favorite too. I would say,
and it's the one we have the most time on.
Right. I mean, it's when we were kids playing it.
Although I did go back and play it not too long ago, and I was kind of disappointed. The graphics were all hard to see. And,
See, I've been playing it with my sons, and
uh-huh.
it's still a lot of fun to me, and it doesn't look as bad as I always expect it to. I always go, okay, this is an older game, this is going to look terrible. But then I begrudge, I was like, oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But
my son's not old enough yet, so I can't relish in that.
it lasts for a few minutes before they start fighting.
Yeah. I've played pretty much all of the Mario Kart games. I have Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart 7, I think, was the one that really brought the most to the series because it added online play. Right?
Yeah.
Until then, it was all local, and if I wanted to race against 8 people, that it wasn't going to happen. But now I can just get on an online match and test myself against anybody in the country, or in the world, actually. And I really like that they added that. Still, if I'm going to sit down and play Mario Kart, it's going to be Super Mario Kart. It's going to be the original tracks, Rainbow Road. I mean, the secrets, the shortcuts, everything. I love everything about that game. I think they've improved on the series since then, but if I'm going to go back and play an older Mario Kart game, it's going to be the Super Mario Kart.
Yeah.
So, but that said, I love Mario Kart 8. I love the fact that they added customization to your kart. They added a ton of people. I think what they're doing with the amiibo, being able to play as Kirby and Zelda in a Mario Kart game, is really awesome.
Now, is that the one for the latest one that
for
came
Wii
out?
U.
For Wii U, okay.
Yeah, and I will say it is breathtakingly beautiful. It is
60 frames a second.
It
probably
is
first of its
so beautiful, that game. One of the most beautiful games on the Wii U, I think. Until we get Zelda HD. Just saying.
Agreed. Alrighty,
Too long already.
25th. Actually, a Twitch username said hello, gentlemen, so we got to say hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Although when I say a Twitch username, I kind of think I'm saying hi to everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
So that is his
username.
So is it my turn?
Yes, 25th.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not a first-person shooter. This game drew me in because of its story. Mass Effect 2. It was a lot better than 1, in my opinion. I mean, I liked Mass Effect. I thought it was it was a really good space RPG. Kind of like Halo, but more RPG than Halo.
Well, it felt like a legitimate space opera.
Yeah, it did. For
it
sure.
felt like a good, fleshed out story, much more than
Yeah.
Halo did.
Yeah, exactly. Mass Effect 2, the way they did everything with that game was really, really amazing to me. I loved the way that they had you lose all of your powers that you had gained in 1. I loved the way they did the whole, you were in the wreck and you were hanging out in space, and so you don't remember a lot of things, you have to regain it all. I thought that was really awesome. Just everything about that game. And then Mass Effect 3 came out, and we're not going to talk about Mass Effect 3, but I think that of the series, Mass Effect 2 is definitely my favorite, and I think it showed that BioWare is capable of producing more than just D&D games. Because up until then, BioWare had really done, they had Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, but that still kind of followed D&D rules.
Yeah.
Their BioWare's RPGs were really very much based on D&D 3, D&D 3.5, and here came Mass Effect, which completely just blew all of that out of the water. It wasn't even the skeleton of what was going on in that game was not based on D&D, and so I think it showed that they were capable of producing game mechanics beyond what they had done in the past.
Yeah, it was good evolution of the gameplay and what they were trying to do with it.
Yeah,
and it felt. I mean, it wasn't as laborious as Knights of the Old Republic sometimes could be.
Yeah, for sure.
So
a Twitch username said he played at Mass Effect 3 all the way through 3 times. I've only played it all the way through twice, so he's beat me on that.
Cool.
But
he must be a fan.
my question is, Shepard or FemShep? Which one? Which one is it? Which one do you play? Male or female?
I would play a female, but I've never played it.
I played
I
female.
need to.
I played
You played
female.
FemChat?
Yep.
So did I.
I thought that was on Xbox only.
No. The
No,
first
it's
one
not.
was Mass
Oh.
Effect 2 and 3 came out on PS.
Oh,
PlayStation.
Got it.
I played Mass Effect 2 on my PC.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I played FemChat. But that's usually what I tend to do with role-playing games like that. Like, Dragon Age, I usually go female. Elder Scrolls, I go female.
I usually play a dwarf.
Yeah.
So.
It's just a strange... I don't know why... Maybe that's a discussion to talk about someday. Why
Someday.
do we make those decisions?
Someday.
So for our list, are we saying the series or
No.
just one?
I don't
One
think we're
of them.
saying the series.
Mass Effect 2,
Two?
definitively, yes.
Okay.
And the other thing that I liked about 2 is you didn't necessarily have to play 1 to understand what was going on.
You really didn't, because I never played 1.
Yeah, but I think you have to play 2 in order to understand 3.
Right.
But yeah, for Mass Effect 2,
It was a good jumping in
Yeah,
point.
it was a really good jumping in point of the series.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
I haven't heard. Riley One is asking if anyone's played Time Shift. I've never heard of that game.
Time Shift. It sounds vaguely familiar. It's not... Or is it Time... No, I'm thinking of Time Splitters.
Yeah, that was a PS2 game.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Time Splitters.
He said it was
Meh.
a
So I wonder what
Windows
Time
game.
Shift is.
Maybe you should give us a little description of what it is.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah,
Let us know.
tell us about it.
my internet worked. I'd be all over it. The question that Twitch username asked, I think is another episode in and of itself, sort of, but Mac or PC, Mac or Windows, right? And I think he was referring to, I don't know if this was a general question or just Mass Effect, but I think categorically we are PC
Gamers.
Mac doesn't really have an existence in the gaming world. I think it's just an add-on. Macs are not meant for gaming by any means.
Right.
So unfortunately, I would love to have a beautiful, Mac Pro with 8 million graphics cards, non-professional cards.
Yeah.
Be running something, but it's just not the
Not
case.
gonna happen.
Yeah, not the case.
So.
So alrighty.
Where are we at?
Let's see. We are on 26, and I think it's yours.
Okay. Let's talk about Devil May Cry.
Let's talk about it.
I love Devil May Cry.
Which one?
I love the series.
Because there's a standout one to me. There is a standout.
3
Yes.
is the best game
Yes.
of the series.
Yes.
But I have a
Yes.
lot of love for the first game as well. We don't
Well-
talk about 2.
No.
4 is very forgettable.
Fourth's the one with Neo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Halfway through the game, they finally let you play as Dante, which was really
Yeah.
stupid.
Yeah. No.
And then you're just replaying the levels.
Yeah.
But I think 3 is the best game of the series. It's much more frantic. Gameplay sped up. All the the different fighting styles you can switch through. What is it? Gunslinger, swordsman,
Yeah.
Royal Guard, and
Yes.
but it was just a really cool, and it was it had a really deep fighting system.
Mm-hmm.
That you're constantly learning and evolving, and
Yes.
the story is a lot of fun. It really fleshes out Virgil
Yeah.
and who he is.
Yeah.
And kind of their connection and stuff like that. It takes place before, it's a prequel.
Yeah. It's
game.
before 1, right?
Yeah, chronologically, but I think it's just a cool series because of how it came to be. It started at the first Devil May Cry started out as Resident Evil 4.
Yeah.
And there was, if I'm correct in my thinking, there was a bug in the game where you'd shoot an enemy and they'd juggle in the air. And so what Capcom did is they scrapped it as a Resident Evil game and made it its own game, but built that mechanic into it so that you could juggle enemies in there with your gunplay.
Right.
And so as you're playing it, you do get a sense of Resident Evil. You've got, in the first game, you've got pre-rendered backgrounds that, change as your character moves through the world and stuff like that. And the music is a little bit, the ambiance of it. I wouldn't say the music, because the music definitely takes on more of a hard rock type edge to it. But just the general ambiance and the creepiness of some of the enemies and stuff, it has a very kind of a Resident Evil lens on top of it. And I think that's kind of unique. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, like you said, the frantic nature of the game is what did it for me. And I mean, there was the reboot.
I liked the reboot. I'm gonna say I really enjoyed the reboot.
It was okay.
When it came out, there's obviously a lot of outcry about how, the new Dante and how he looked. And yeah, he's different. He's not the same Dante in the older games. But I don't think he was a bad character.
Yeah.
Once I got past my initial frustration with what they were doing with it, and I actually played the game and followed the storyline through the end, I actually really liked him. I thought he was a really cool character with, in the confines of that game itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was a lot of fun. Virgil was, it had a lot of the same elements as the Devil May Cry storyline. It had the antagonistic approach with Virgil, yet the brotherly, constant clashing, but never quite being, splitting up. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like it had that brother relationship in it, and it was. I thought it was pretty
they were frenemies.
Yeah, but the reboot did a lot of cool things too. Some of the level designs were really cool. Like there's the one where you're going through the news network and you're having to jump on the graphic cards and stuff of this very Fox News type television show. And then there's the level where you go into the nightclub and the entire level is built on the moving sound waves, of the music that's played in the background. And I don't know, those are really cool ideas. And I really liked a lot of the things they did with it. I like the art style of it.
So we have some discussion going on.
Okay.
Just want to say hi to Van Sweetie, I think is how you say his name. Ryan 1 brought up a Time Shift is an Xbox game, right? And he said it was not that popular and some other stuff. I think the important key is it's an Xbox game. We don't own Xboxes, although Xbox One.
I have an original Xbox. I had a 360 for a while, but I never played it.
Right.
I'm not a Halo fan. Right. That's really what Xbox has going for it.
Right. They call it the Halo box.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously it's, and I won't discount Halo. It did a lot for the industry. I don't prefer it though. I don't think it's that fun to play.
Right.
Yeah. We're typically not Xbox players.
Yeah, so that's why we don't really know Time Shift, unfortunately.
Right.
But from his description, I definitely will check it out for sure. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'll have to stop and read his description better. And also, let's see.
Van Sweetie said he gave up on DMC when the third game came out.
Ooh.
The first one was so good. Disagree. I thought the third one was really good. Also, we're in Burley, Idaho, which is
Podunk.
It's a little dinky town. The reason for starting shows exists in this town.
Yes.
Yeah. So
we have nothing else to do on a Friday night than sit and talk about games.
Friday, Saturday, Wednesday,
every night.
It's a very elongated weekend.
Yeah.
And Valentine's Eve, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so let's see. Twitch username said you guys are putting more effort into understanding these games than the producers are. We should say...
Interesting.
Duh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the, Joe Vans right there said definitely the point of the show.
That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to really take a higher approach to what games are and why we play them.
Yeah, for my part, the reason why I'm excited to do this and why I'm putting the time in to do it is because, you have literature as this long-standing, it's acceptable to talk about literature and to see things that the author didn't intend. Like a famous example is Herman Melville wrote Moby Dick, and the joke is, well, it's just about a whale, but people read into it so many other things. I believe you can do that same thing with video games.
Yeah.
And maybe there is value in discussing video games beyond, dude, that was awesome.
Which we obviously think there is value in it.
Yeah.
Everybody interprets things differently based on their experiences with it. I interpret literature differently than somebody else would, and the same goes for games, the same goes for movies, the same goes for music.
Exactly.
It's a medium, it's largely for entertainment value, but it has to be considered an art form because of how people experience.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I do think some games are well, okay. Art, gaming, and art is definitely a different subject or another topic.
That's another topic for another because not
but-
every video game is art.
Right, exactly.
No, but
and
I
there's
do
art
think
for
the
art's
medium.
sake.
I mean, but there's art that I don't think is art. Like taking a urinal and painting it pink and putting it in the Louvre. Okay, but that's acceptable as art because there was intention behind it.
And that's the point of it. It's subjective.
Exactly.
You know, art is subjective.
And I think games have that. There's value in doing that. I mean, you named the 4 big mediums, right? Literature, music, movies / TV, and games. And of the 4, gaming is definitely the black sheep in which people in mainstream media don't think gaming has any value. You say, oh, I play games, and immediately they think, well, you're a nerd that has nothing to do than just drink Mountain Dew and eat Pizza Hut and play games all night.
I hate Mountain Dew.
And no, I there's definitely, it deserves to be considered in the same way that the other 3 media types are.
Yeah.
So.
I'd agree. And going back to that, I do think that is a legitimate topic for another night, is talking about video games and its connection to art.
Yes.
We were talking about Halo just a minute ago.
Mm-hmm.
None of us prefer the Halo series, but the music in Halo is fantastic.
Yes.
It has incredible music. It's moving, it's epic, it makes you feel something, and that's an aspect of gaming that comes from the gaming.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, back to what I said about it being subjective, I think there's a lot of weight to that discussion.
And there's a lot of people that would disagree with us as saying Halo is a mainstay game.
Which is fine.
How can you talk about gaming without talking about Halo? And I agree. I think Halo definitely pushed the cause of gaming forward.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it's not the kind of game that I'm going to sit down and play. Now, if I had 5 friends in college and we all played Halo, then I would have a very different experience with that game.
Right.
But playing it all by myself in my bedroom, didn't have that experience. A Twitch username asked, "Did you guys enjoy Portal 1 and 2?" Have we talked about? Is Portal on our? Have we talked about it yet?
I thought we had talked about it.
I think we've talked about it a few times. I don't have it on my list.
I have Portal on my list.
Okay.
So that will be a discussion.
We will talk about that. But
briefly,
just suffice it to say, it created an entirely new genre of video games, and a meme that has transcended gaming. I mean, people who don't game know the cake is a lie. Yeah. So I think that definitely speaks to the staying power of Portal.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and I took it. I had it on my list, and then I thought about it, and I took it off. And I did that because of my disdain for where it is and where it can go. I want it to go further. I want it to go into the Half-Life world. I want it to have more essence of an outside atmosphere than Portal 2 did. I think Portal 2 brought it to that edge. It's just, let's go further. So I think Valve has something going for Portal.
Yeah.
Also Cave Johnson. I mean, it doesn't get any better than Cave Johnson.
I would agree. Okay.
Life Gives You Lemons. One of my favorite monologues in gaming is Life Gives You Lemons by Cave Johnson.
So we're on 27. DMC was...
Yeah, not DMC, Devil May Cry.
Well...
But yeah.
I guess, yeah, okay, so Devil May Cry.
Technically, the reboot is called DMC. That's the official title.
All right.
I just want to clarify.
Yeah, no,
I'm not saying
fine.
DMC is on there.
But... Not a aficionado, so it's okay. So the next one's mine. I'm going to say Star Fox. Oh, what's...
I was just
reading the comments.
Yeah. A Twitch username just said the cake is real. I had it, I swear.
Insane laugh.
With an insane laugh. It made me chuckle.
I wonder what that sounds like.
Just really quick, as a side note, we're going to do a episode of top gaming villains, and GLaDOS will definitely be on that list.
Okay.
I don't know how she couldn't.
She couldn't be. She will be on that list. Anyway, moving forward.
Okay, so I'm going to go with Star Fox on this one. I loved it growing up. It was a spaceship, although 64 version again.
Is that the 64 version, not the SNES?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, not sure what you guys feel about that, but I thought it brought a new level of immersion within a bounding box. It was almost like it was a unique perspective to, those top-down shooters that you always shoot and you just move left and right.
Yeah.
I thought it was that
Shoot 'em
idea.
ups.
Yeah, and it added that
Shmups.
perspective.
Shmups.
Shmups. Okay.
For shoot 'em ups.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what it is. They're called shmups.
Yeah.
Shmups.
You know, I never really played a lot of Star Fox. I had a roommate in college who he loved Star Fox, and he always played Star Fox 64. So my experience with it was, kind of through what he liked.
Vicarious.
Yeah, I played it a little bit, but I never quite got into it a whole lot. So I don't have anything against it, but I don't know if I'd put it on my list just because I've never really spent much time with it.
Sure.
So
what would you say? It doesn't have to be on our list. We can totally skip it, and that's the goal.
Well, I think Star Fox, the Super Nintendo version, it was such a new idea, right? I mean, up until then, you had like Flight Simulator. There were Flight Simulator games, but Star Fox was like the original I'm flying a spaceship in space game. At least I don't remember any prior to Star Fox. That was my first I'm flying a spaceship game, instead of an airplane, But I don't know. I could never get into Star Fox. It wasn't my... I had it for my Super Nintendo. I never beat it. I hated the frog. I thought the frog was annoying.
Slippy Toad?
Yes. I thought he was the most annoying character that had ever been made in gaming
Well,
up until that point.
Because he was always just screaming at you to bail him out.
I know. And I always died doing a barrel roll. It's like I'd try to swerve so that I could go between the two things, and I would just dead. So I mean, I hadn't developed as a gamer yet. I wasn't able to finesse the controls enough to play Star Fox. But no, I definitely think it was a landmark series because it led to a lot of more games set in space. And I'm trying to think of like other games that were really kind of space games.
Asteroids.
I mean, obviously Asteroids, but that wasn't like... But you know what I mean.
Yeah,
I think
no,
one
I
of the
know
big
what you're
ones, Wing Commander, that came out in
Yeah, Wing-
92 or something.
Yeah.
That was around the same time as 64 was.
Yeah.
What about... I don't know if it's on any of your list, but what about games like, like TIE Fighter?
Oh.
You know what I mean?
I grew up with that.
It's more of a simulation type game. You
Yeah.
know? It's
Yes.
It's meant to be very immersive. It's very technical. It's very...
Yeah, exactly.
It almost like I enjoyed it for a time, and then I got to the point where like it felt more like a job than a game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah, I wouldn't put that on the list.
yeah, just a thought. We're talking about space games.
Yeah.
Spaceship games.
Like we've already said, I think Descent was my ultimate spacey type game.
Okay.
But I don't know if it was the same time or not. I don't think it was. So, anyways, we'll just skip Star Fox.
I think it's definitely worthy of discussion.
We can discuss
It is.
further,
It is. But it won't
That's
put it
fine.
on the list. So, should I go again or
Go again.
skip?
Go again.
I'm going to... Let's see. I hate to bring up Mario stuff.
Our viewers have gone off on a little portal
Yeah,
tangent,
they're talking about their own stuff.
which
is
is great.
totally cool.
I love it.
Do it.
All right. Let's see.
Although, was that my quote? Did I honestly say I'm
Yes.
flying a spaceship?
Yes,
in
you
space?
did say that.
I'm really tired, so I'm sorry. Normally, I'm more articulate. Forgive me.
So it could go between the two things.
Like, you know what I'm
what she
talking
said.
about. This is totally going on out of no context on Reddit.
Highlight.
But-
Alrighty, I'm gonna say GoldenEye 64.
yes, let's talk about GoldenEye.
All right, I'm gonna put that on the list.
What did you like about it?
What did you feel it was worthy of putting it on the list?
Why,
It belongs on the
Why
list.
can't
Why?
it? Why can't it go on the list? I'm gonna
For
say
one, it's a good movie game.
it is. It follows.
This is like
It's
a
the best
licensed
movie.
game.
It's the
that,
best
like,
licensed movie game that
for sure.
And it followed the story too. You could watch the movie, play the game, and you're like, "Ooh, this is unique."
Arguably, I liked the game better than the movie.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember the
The GoldenEye movie
The movie, yeah.
I'll give you
It was with
Boris-
Pierce Brosnan, right?
with Boris.
Boris.
And
In the pen.
explosion
The
pen.
pen.
I can't remember.
It's weird though. You know, Sean Bean dies in that movie. He doesn't
dies
die.
in
He
every
doesn't.
movie.
He doesn't die in stuff.
He
dies in everything.
He's
the villain
Janus,
guy.
isn't he? Yeah,
Yeah,
his
he's
name
Trevelyan.
Janus, the double-faced god or something.
Well, Trevelyan, Alec Trevelyan was his name, but he was wasn't Janus Thop the secret?
That was his name.
No, his name wasn't Janus. That was his code name.
Yeah, that was his code name.
But his real name was Trevelyan.
Yeah,
He
for
was
sure.
006.
006.
Yeah.
And Bond
You know-
left him to die.
Now I'm on a Sean Bean tangent. It's interesting to me. He dies in everything except the Silent Hill movies.
He doesn't die in National Treasure.
National Treasure.
Oh.
He's in both Silent Hill movies, and he survives both Silent Hill movies.
Well, that's crazy sauce.
You would think of any place you could die, it would be in Silent Hill.
Yeah.
And Sean Bean, the guy who dies in everything, survives Silent Hill. I don't know. I think that's
intense.
That's funny to me.
That is funny.
It's kind of funny.
Back to GoldenEye.
Let's talk about GoldenEye.
Yeah. Sure. GoldenEye, gameplay wise, obviously one of the most influential first person shooters on a console.
Yeah. It showed that a shooter
done.
could be on a console.
Mm-hmm. And I think the console that it was on, 64, was literally the best platform to start it. It started the
Analog stick.
The analog stick, yeah. And you could Z, add the Z target, and you could target around.
And it was cool. It felt like you were holding a gun. It had your trigger was on the other side of the controller, and it was a very, innovative way to play a game.
And you could look all around. I know it was done before, but I guess it's already been rehashed, right? Or hashed, but you could look around.
Yeah,
that was a cool thing. So
now they're making fun of your crazy sauce.
That is, I say crazy sauce all the time. I'm not apologizing for that one.
Twitch username, man. What a troll.
Yeah.
I do like what Van Sweetie's talking about, though. He brings up Perfect Dark, and I think it needs to be discussed while talking about GoldenEye.
Yeah, the two guns,
together.
Two analog sticks. Now you see two analog sticks in consoles and controllers. For example, the latest controller, the new 3DS. Two analog sticks, right?
Yeah, that's two.
Although
which came out today,
tiny.
and Majora's Mask came out today. So
I love.
Did you get it?
Mask.
I haven't bought it yet.
Oh.
I really wanted the collector edition, and so I'm gonna wait and see if I can find one on eBay for not $800. But eventually, I will buy it.
When you play GoldenEye, though, do you allow? Is Oddjob playable? Do you let people play as Oddjob?
When you're doing multiplayer?
Yeah. Or is he outlawed?
He is kind of OP, isn't he? Yeah, because he's tall too. That was always the thing. If you wanted a headshot,
no, he's short. Oddjob's short. You can never.
Is
get
he the guy
headshot
with the hat?
Yeah, because you're shooting over him all the time.
Yeah, I remember going up, and then if you
try to cap him,
were anyone else, if you were anyone else, he could run up and do circles around you. You wouldn't be able to find him.
He could karate chop you to death.
I remember that. So no.
But yeah, being more serious, and GoldenEye does definitely deserve a spot on the list. It showed that the shooter could be a legitimate game on a console. It took it out of the PC space.
Yeah.
From there, we obviously got Perfect Dark, but then even more down the road, Halo.
Yeah, well, Halo came out like 4 years after GoldenEye. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that we would have had Halo had we not.
We
had
probably
GoldenEye.
wouldn't have.
Right.
So.
And I think multiplayer too. It was awesome first person, and I think it had auto aim. If I remember correctly, you could enable it. I think.
Yep.
And I think that was the first bane of existence for consoles for first person shooter was the essence of auto aim.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a very pivotal game.
Yeah.
So that's why it's on our list.
Yeah,
sure.
I also, just to concur with Van Sweetie, I always played Boris in GoldenEye as well. I sucked though. I never won a match, but I was playing up against my best friend who actually owned the N64. I didn't own an N64, so he got to play as many times as he wanted. I only got to play when we had gaming nights, so I wasn't as good as he was. But even anytime I went over there was the two games we played for the N64: GoldenEye, 007, and Venture Beetlebug Racing. Which
I've never even heard of that.
If you
Venture
go
Beetle
YouTube
Bug.
it, it's a crazy game. You race as bugs, as Volkswagen bugs. It's like Mario Kart, but with Volkswagen bugs. It's so crazy.
Okay.
I always, when he asked which one do you want to play, I would say obviously the racing game, but I did play a lot of GoldenEye 007.
I'd always pick like one of the random soldiers, like one of the snow suit soldiers, you know.
Yeah. Especially on those maps.
Yeah.
I always played as GoldenEye. You know, Pierce Brosnan.
Bond. James Bond.
Yes.
Which they just released the first picture of Daniel Craig in
Spectre, which
is
is so exciting.
I know. I'm super excited.
I'll say it, I grew up on James Bond. My
So did
mother
I.
is a huge James Bond fan. I've seen all the movies. I will say I think Daniel Craig is probably the best Bond.
I think so too. He has a vulnerability about
He does.
him that I
And
love.
obviously that's purposely done. They're going
Yeah.
back and they're kind of remaking the character, you know. And it
Yeah.
started with Casino Royale where he wasn't the Bond.
Which is an absolutely perfect movie.
Oh, it's
I have
fantastic.
no complaints about Casino
you know, some of the
Royale.
sequels, you know, Quantum of Solace, weaker, but it's still
It
enjoyable.
was a good show. Yeah.
You know, it kind of started getting a lot better with Skyfall, and now we've got Spectre that'll be coming out soon. And it's exciting, but I do think Daniel Craig is a fantastic Bond, and I think he's, you know, I'd even say he's a better Bond than Sean Connery.
Yeah.
You know, and that's saying something.
Yeah, and I think those are more serious. I think it tips its nod to how serious Bond is, and how it doesn't need to be ultra realistic in the sense of, or I guess unrealistic, because James Bond was always about these gadgets and utilizing them, and
it's definitely downplaying that aspect in the new ones. Although
Right.
it did bring back Q in Skyfall,
Skyfall.
and I loved how they reinterpreted Q. You know,
Yeah,
he was young, he was much younger. It wasn't what we were expecting. You know, but even the gadgets he did give Bond in Skyfall, they were limited, very simple gadgets. But
A Twitch username is killing me.
Yeah.
he's doing some good stuff.
Dude,
Well,
awesome.
you know, he's
He's
playing
playing
off Jonathan
Shaken
saying
Not
that he
Stirred.
played as GoldenEye.
Yeah.
He always played as GoldenEye, and
wait,
I always played as Shaken Not Stirred for sure.
it's just kind of funny.
oh,
Yeah.
yes. So let's move on to
What number
28.
So that was 27.
That was 27.
Is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
Jonathan went twice.
9:30 our time. I'm assuming we're gonna go to 10, or
You know, I think we should. This is gonna be. We're not gonna go to 30. In light of Valentine's Day, I think we should talk about our favorite couples in gaming, like couples in games.
Couples in gaming.
Yeah.
So switch topics.
Kind of switch topics a little
couples
bit
in gaming.
and talk about our favorite couples in gaming.
All right, I'll let you guys go first.
Colt.
That one's a hard one. I'm not gonna lie.
Pyramid Head and Mannequin.
Okay.
You guys have no. That's not my vote. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one. Couples in gaming. You know, you've got Link, you've got Zelda, Mario and Peach. I'd like to see my ultimate matchup. I guess if I'm playing matchmaker, it would be Nathan Drake and Lara Croft. Why hasn't that happened?
Why
yet?
has that not happened? Why is there
You know
not
what I
been
mean?
We've got Rise of the Tomb Raider coming. We might as well just throw
Yeah.
Nathan Drake in there. I mean,
Get him in there. I love Nathan Drake.
why not? They're both made by Ubisoft, aren't they?
No, Nathan Drake is Naughty Dog.
Oh, that's right.
Uncharted's Naughty Dog, and
Tomb Raider was.
no, it's not Ubisoft. It's Square.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
What
Yeah.
should we name it?
Greatest couples. That's my dream matchup in a perfect world. If we could get those two kids
Nathan
together,
Drake and Lara Croft.
I don't know,
A
I'd probably
Twitch
go with Link
username
and
said,
Zelda.
"Best couple in gaming: Wario and Luigi."
I think that's pretty good.
You know, I could see
I
them
don't think it
together.
gets
I could
better than
actually
that.
see them getting together.
I just see those kids
you know,
together.
it is the day and age
Yeah.
of that
Definitely.
sort
I
of
mean,
stuff.
Wario's got the bear going on for him, while Luigi's kind of a, you know, I could see it.
Yeah,
Definitely. Kind of an odd couple.
it's an odd
Matchup.
couple. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
shoot, that is.
Yeah,
It's an
what
interesting
about
topic.
Mario and Luigi? You always see
No,
them
they're
together,
brothers
right?
though.
They're brothers. They're not a couple.
Well, what is a
Although
couple?
I guess you know.
Just
Well,
a couple of guys.
I mean, we're talking about Valentine's Day.
All right,
romantic
how about
couples.
So
how
we're
about
talking romantic?
yeah? Are we talking romantic
or
are
just
we
people that we would gaming characters we'd like to see together?
Oh,
as a couple.
Oh.
You know, you've got Nathan and Lara. You've got Dante. We talked about Devil May Cry. Who's Dante's match? Come on, you know this. It's Bayonetta.
As much of a gaming icon as she is, I've never played a Bayonetta game.
They're all right. It's Devil May Cry.
But with a girl.
Yeah, I mean,
there you go.
there's not much
Enough
difference.
said.
My couple is Locke and Cells from
Ooh, yeah.
Final Fantasy VI.
Yeah. I should have seen that coming from you.
I know. That's one of my
I should
favorite
have seen
games.
that coming.
I think that they're, because they kind of, they flirt and, they have this energy between them for being little, 16-bit characters. But,
Van Sweetie brings up a good couple that I know you'll like. He suggests Raynar
definitely.
and Kerrigan.
Definitely. And now that we have StarCraft 2, Heart of the Swarm definitely kind of fleshed that relationship out more than it was previously. And I think that's a good point. I think so. For sure. One of the other couples that I think, stand out for me, again from Final Fantasy VI, but it's Shadow and his wife. She dies in the fire.
Right.
Or his girl. Yeah, it's his wife or girlfriend.
It's his wife.
It's his wife. And everything that causes him to become. Shadow is definitely my favorite character from Final Fantasy VI, and that his backstory with his wife is tragically romantic to me. Very, very Romeo and Juliet if Romeo lived.
Yeah, kind of more of a tragic take on it.
So.
I just realized our topic was always next show tonight. So
right on.
We got to fix that.
Twitch username said Sonic and Master Chief.
Really? You'd like to see that, dude?
I don't think you would. I don't think they would like to see that. I think they're just they're playing with us.
They're trolling. They're
Twitch
trolling.
Twitch username is playing with us.
I love it.
I'd have to say Pikachu and Jigglypuff.
What would that, if they had offspring,
dude?
What, there's got to be a Pokemon that would be the offspring of Pikachu and Jigglypuff. What would it be? I don't even know.
A Twitch username kind of redeemed himself a little bit. He suggested Alex and Gordon Freeman.
I could see that from Half-Life 2.
Yeah. Oh, it's a good call.
I could see them getting together.
That's a good call.
She's not bad.
Yeah, I mean she's smart enough to be with Gordon, so definitely.
Yeah.
Plus, she's experienced similar things, so I could see them.
What about Raiden and Rose from 2, Metal Gear Solid 2?
I know Metal Gear Solid is like gaming definition of
But
gaming.
it's so tough to talk about because it's so convoluted.
Yeah.
It's such a convoluted storyline that I don't even know what's going on half the time. And I enjoy the games for the most part.
Yeah.
Let's just stay away from that for now.
I think I can't talk about Metal Gear Solid. I've only ever seen movies of them. Although my understanding is the games are basically movies.
They're getting there.
So, but yeah, I don't know those characters enough to comment on them. But who else is there?
This is a tough topic.
I know it is kind of a little bit.
What do you think, Jonathan?
It really is hard because it's not just about the games; it's about the characters.
Yeah,
I focused more on the games when I was growing up, about the characters. So, I don't know.
Well,
we have lots of material though.
Yeah.
What about one of the Ninja Turtles and what's her face?
And April?
In April, yeah.
No, that's just weird.
That's just weird.
For one thing,
interspecies like Sonic and Master Chief.
They're obviously teenagers. Let's go away from the interspecies type thing. They're teenagers. She's a professional journalist, so she's got to at least be in her 20s ish. At least.
Yeah, at least.
So she could show them a few things.
Well, it just seems odd. I feel dirty talking about that.
Yeah.
We are kind of talking about Megan Fox here. She wouldn't mind.
I don't care about Megan
You know,
Fox. She
an
does
interesting one.
no. That movie doesn't exist to me. That movie doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist.
Agreed.
You know, I'm thinking about like the Arkham Knight or Arkham City.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of felt like Batman and Catwoman were kind of forced. Who would be Batman's perfect mate in gaming?
See, that's a I don't know.
Or is Batman a loner? Should Batman just stay alone?
You know, Batman's a hard topic because you have to think beyond what he is in games.
Yeah.
You know, you have to think about the comics, you know, and there is that ongoing relationship with Catwoman, you know. You know, there's always sexual tension between them and across multiple medias.
Yeah.
You know, but if we were going to take Batman as a gaming character from the Arkham series, what would be his gaming counterpart? Is that kind of the question you're asking?
Who would be Batman from the Arkham series counterpart in gaming?
What about Joanna Dark?
I can see that. From Perfect Dark.
Yeah.
I could see that.
You know, it really is interesting that Batman doesn't really have the same thing that Tony Stark has. You know, as I'm bad with names, but what's her name in the movies? Pepper. Yeah. He really doesn't have a confidant.
No, he doesn't.
I think the difference between it is, you know, that
he's
a loner. Yeah.
You know, and that's where his strength comes from.
Maybe he swings the other way.
Definitely not. No,
Definitely not. Okay.
We're not going to have that discussion. Maybe the Adam West
Maybe the Adam West version, yeah.
But no, not Arkham City Batman. Definitely is not.
Well, you know, even in the context of the game, when Robin does show up in Arkham City, Batman immediately disregards him, sends him on an errand, you know, gets him out of the, like, even with the Bat family, he's surrounded by, you know, Oracle, you know, Nightwing, Robin, you know, all these characters. He's still very much a loner. Right.
Yeah. Unless, I mean, you could make the argument of Batman and Joker. You know, and I think that's definitely a discussion.
I think that's, you know, I think that is the discussion. I think Batman's counterpart is the Joker.
Yes.
You know, a lot
they have so many similarities.
Does Joker exist without Batman?
Does Batman exist without Joker?
You know, they're two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
The two faces of that flipping.
Even with all of the other villains and everything, I still think that the Joker is the perfect foil to Batman.
He is.
Because Batman does everything he possibly can to not kill. And yet here's the Joker who kill randomly because it'll make him laugh. You know, I maybe not in a sexual sense that Batman and Joker are together,
couple, right.
but I do think that in terms of being a couple, they're inseparable.
Like an actual physical counterpart.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you look at what you can't have one without the other,
right.
And that's how Batman and the Joker exist.
You know, I kind of growing up, my brother was more of a Batman, you know, fanatic or fanboy, right? But for me, Joker was never a counterpart as much as the first movie, the Dark Knight was the first movie. As much as that movie solidified the fact that, you know, you need me. You know, remember when he said that?
Well, you know, the idea existed for a much longer time in the comics, you know, but I think the Dark Knight did bring that to the masses. Mm-hmm. You know, it made it the forefront. It showed who the Joker was and what his relationship is with the Joker. You know, in the context of that film, the Joker starts out going to the mob to offer his services to kill the Batman.
Yeah.
You know, midway through the movie, he realizes he enjoys having Batman around, and he's not going to kill him because he's too interesting. You know,
for sure.
If only Heath Ledger, man.
I know.
But what I think
a shame.
the other side of that is I lost my train of thought. Crap. You know, what Batman, we know the other side of Batman, right? We know there's Batman and Bruce Wayne. Mm-hmm. We don't know the other side of the Joker.
We don't. And
there has to be, there is another side.
You know, there are stories out there where they try to give a little bit hint as to his origins.
Yeah.
I like the Joker without the origin.
I do too.
It makes him a better character because he's more of a wild card.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, and I think it shows, I honestly think that the Joker shows who Batman would be if he lost Bruce Wayne. right? Because Bruce Wayne really is Batman's humanity, and we don't have that humanity with the Joker. If Bruce Wayne were to disappear, if he were to fully become Batman and lose that side of himself, what would make him different than the Joker?
Yeah, and who is he really? Is he really Bruce Wayne, or is he really Batman? Which one is the mask? Which one is the disguise? Is Batman the disguise, or is Bruce Wayne the disguise? I would argue that he is Batman, and Bruce Wayne is a front for who he really is. And it's just, going back to the film again, The Dark Knight plays a lot with that, what Batman's rules are. Mm-hmm. Batman's one rule is he doesn't kill.
Yeah.
The Joker has obviously crossed that line. So how much, is the Joker just further along on the evolutionary trail than Batman is?
Yeah.
And will Batman ever catch up to that point?
Van Sweeney said, I don't really see the Joker as a counterpart of Batman. Batman can easily be who he is without the Joker. It's the Joker who always seeks out Batman and provokes him. In terms of because we're talking about the Arkham games, they really set the Joker up as the counterpart of Batman. Yeah. In the greater universe, I agree.
Right.
Batman can be who he is without the Joker. But in terms of talking just strictly about the games, and even, somewhat the movies.
Yeah. Yes.
I do think that the Joker is an integral part of who Batman is. Because he sees the Joker and he does not want to be that person. And that's why he strives so hard to kill himself. Or to not kill the Joker. And that's why I think the ending of Arkham City is so...
Spoilers.
I'm not going to talk about it. But I think it's so poignant is because of what happens and the way that even in the end, Batman was trying to save him.
Yeah.
And it was... Yeah, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to ruin it. But
talking about the games, there's a part in Arkham Origins where the Joker gets apprehended by the police midway through the game, and this is obviously an origin story. The Gotham police don't know who Batman is; they still view him as a criminal. Mm-hmm. And when they apprehend the Joker, they make the comment, that Batman is the Joker's partner in crime, in this game, and and the Joker's. He's like, no, he's not my partner. And the cop says to him, something along the lines of, who else would throw themselves off a building to save your ass?
Save you, yeah.
And the Joker stops and thinks about it. He's like, yeah, who indeed? The Batman goes out of his way, to keep these people around him alive, when the obvious argument is, how much easier would it be for him, maybe not even to pull the trigger, but let them fall to their death?
Exactly.
It'll save millions of lives, thousands of lives down the line. Yeah. But Batman holds to that morality, whereas the Joker doesn't. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an interesting conversation.
Yes, the Arkham games are on PC.
Yes.
So definitely go play them.
Yeah.
You probably
Van Sweeney brought up the point that he's never played the Batman games, and I would say you're doing yourself a disservice by not playing them. They're fantastic games.
Yeah. If you like the Batman world universe,
even if you like games, great games.
They're fantastic.
I would say, if you don't want to pay full price for them, I got all three of them on the Steam sale.
Yeah,
for
wait for a good
$5.
Steam sale.
They're not expensive when they go on sale, but they're definitely worth it.
Although the new one coming out is gonna
Arkham Knight. I can't wait for Arkham Knight. But anyway, back to our topic.
Let's talk about
couples and gaming.
Okay, I'm having a hard time thinking of couples in gaming. So what about this question? Is there a good video game out there that deals with this idea of love? Maybe not romance per se, but we could talk about that. And I'm not talking about sex games.
Yeah,
but
I'm not either.
Games where it talks about an honest, loving relationship. Is there a
game that shows that kind of relationship? I don't. Octodad, maybe.
Maybe.
Octodad?
Have you not heard of Octodad?
I've only watched a few Twitch streamers.
That's an interesting game, for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is there a game that shows a realistic marriage?
Obviously a lot of motivations in gaming is rescuing the one you love.
Yeah.
It started with Mario, rescuing the damsel.
But is there a game that shows
what a relationship
love
is, what the toll
rescue.
of a relationship.
What happens after Mario and Peach get together?
Yeah. Why does she keep getting kidnapped?
Well, that's a different topic. Where
she
did all
wants
the
to
Bowser?
be a
Where did the
damsel.
Where did the Bowser
just
kids come from?
Is Peach half Bowser? Who knows?
Ooh.
Who knows? But no, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know that there is a game out there that realistically shows what love is.
You know, I was just going to think about that. Alupina 1988 just brought up Heavy Rain, and I was just kind of thinking about that. It does show that, you know, the father relationship with his son. You know, trying to. I don't know. I don't want to. That's still a fairly new game. I don't want to talk too much about it in case
I haven't played
spoilers. You know, but I would say it does investigate, you know, what a familial relationship.
Yeah,
could be
on that
under
note, I
these
think
stresses.
Red Dead Redemption definitely
plays
all up on that.
You know, I can't believe I didn't think of that one yet.
Yeah.
You know, that's a good one.
I you know, from what I've seen of Heavy Rain, I do have to agree with Twitch username. It does seem more like drama than love, but love is a part of it.
Well, what about the games that kind of add they like go a little further than just, you know, trying to make a couple, like Mass Effect, and I vaguely know what I'm talking about right now, but Mass Effect had the ability to choose and kind of mingle.
Oh yeah, and so does Dragon Age.
But was that drama, or was that an attachment that built? You know what I mean?
I would say it's companionship.
On which level? The characters or the gamers?
Both, I think.
Really? What about like Witcher 3? or Witcher 3 is coming out, right?
Witcher 3 is coming out.
Okay, so Witcher 2.
Yeah, Witcher 2, a lot of the motivation and one of the...
You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's
what's
Trish.
her name?
Triss.
Yeah.
That's how you say it.
You know, that is one of the main points of the game, is he's trying to find out what happened to her. And you can, you know...
Yeah. After that first scene with her boobs and everything.
Right.
You know,
you can pass that.
Vance brought up an interesting question. Where did all those Bowser children come from? You know, you in the Wii versions, you battle the children.
Yeah.
And they
were in Super Mario Brothers 3.
Yeah, they showed up in Super Mario Brothers 3.
And Super Mario Brothers.
They fleshed them out better.
That's right.
Super Mario World.
You know, but they're obviously...
And then they had Cooper Jr. I mean, they did away with the kids and put them in... Although, I will say one of my favorite parts about Super Mario Kart 8, is that the Bowser children are in it.
Nice.
And they're also in the new the Brawl games. The new Smash Brothers.
Right.
Sorry, the new Smash Brothers.
I knew someone was going to bring up hot coffee. Alupina 1988 brings up the hot coffee mod in San Andreas.
You know, I don't think that's love.
That's just a sex minigame.
Yeah.
You know, love is so much more beyond
You know, that
sex.
brings up a really good point. Like the God of War games. Like Kratos.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole reason he became who he was because he killed his wife and daughter.
Yeah. Albeit he was tricked into it, you know.
He was tricked into it.
Manipulated and stuff like that, but...
I mean, that's the whole impetus of the first game.
That's the driving force, you know, his rage over what he did.
Yeah.
The loss of his family, you know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting, you know. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's a dynamic with gamers. You know, gamers have a mentality of, hey, how far can I take something? Versus, hey, this story is intriguing me. I want to, you know, like Sims, you know? I mean, even Sims...
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you know, The Sims.
It's like, hey,
you could develop a fairly deep connection with The Sims.
Right.
Which is interesting. I guess that's another question is, what character in gaming could you see yourself falling in love with?
Well, on looks or
on all of it. On all of it.
Yeah.
The complete package. Who is the complete package gaming mate?
I think we should leave chat up to that one. Chat might have some.
Let's let
them
the viewers hash it out.
I mean, I know who mine is, hands down, for sure. But I won't say mine until we have a little bit more discussion about it.
I'd have to say, well, okay. Well, we'll see what chat says.
You know.
But, Should we switch topics a little bit?
Yeah, let's kind of switch it up again. I think we're kind of running into a wall.
Couples is really hard.
That's a tough question.
But it's a good Valentine's
I'm just trying
No,
to
it's fun to
embrace
think
the
about.
holiday.
Well, you know, you've got, going back to Nathan Drake, obviously his in-game, was Elena.
Mm.
But in Uncharted 2, I always liked Chloe. I was kind of annoyed when Elena showed up again because I thought Chloe was a cooler character.
Right.
But obviously Drake picked Elena. I don't know.
Twitch username said Toad is the perfect mate.
For him? Her?
For everyone.
Van Sweetie's talking about Chris and Jill from Resident Evil. It's one of those weird things. They never do. It's never stated that they are ever together in any capacity other than partners. There doesn't seem to be any of that romantic level of relationship between the two. It seems to be very professional. Even in Resident Evil 5, where I will go into spoiler territory.
Well, it was a bad game anyway.
It wasn't a bad game. It just wasn't a Resident Evil game.
It was a bad game.
I enjoyed it. It was fun. It wasn't a Resident Evil game, but it was
Sure.
fun.
Sure.
The tacked on co-op was weird, but
Okay. I'll go with you on that.
anyway, the whole, throughout that whole game, he's trying to find out what happened to Jill, and so there's something obviously driving him there.
Yeah.
But it wasn't romantic feelings.
Yeah.
So I would say that they're a couple in the very basic sense of the word, but not romantically linked.
Right.
And the same goes for Leon and Leon and Claire.
Yeah.
In Resident Evil 2, and I don't know.
I in referring to chat here, I don't know how to say anyone's name in this, but Alupina. Alupina. I didn't want to say the last part of that.
1988.
Okay, that guy.
That guy.
He brought up Duke Nukem, of course. That
perfect mate.
Perfect mate. I'd like to know the reasons behind that, honestly.
Yeah.
What makes
Why
it?
Duke
Because
Nukem?
I wouldn't pick Duke Nukem. I would pick someone like Master Chief.
I think Duke Nukem's compensating for something. Overcompensating.
I can see that.
All right,
For sure.
I'll leave that one alone.
My complete denial. Bad game. That is a bad game.
Not sure which one he's referring to.
Resident Evil 5.
Oh.
My perfect mate, Luca from Chrono Trigger. She's smart. I think she's sexy. I could definitely see hooking up with Luca. Although Marley was... It's a toss-up, but I definitely... Luca's got the brains. So, I would go with Luca from Chrono Trigger.
Huh. Alright.
I don't know, man.
We can change the subject if you guys want to.
I'm feeling a little weird,
I just don't.
I'd have to say Peach, honestly. Just to get that out there. Peach, she just sounds delicious. So,
Waiting.
I've
Pressure's
always
on you. Pressure's on you.
I've always liked Zelda, but I've also always liked Lara Croft.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
And that's just
Right.
because, I love the Indiana Jones movies. I like that adventure type genre. I'm not talking
Plus,
about assets
who
or anything,
doesn't
but
like Angelina Jolie?
I don't.
Come on.
I didn't like the movie. Come on.
Come on. You didn't like the movies?
No.
The second one was weird, but the first one was good.
No. It even had Daniel Craig in it, and I didn't like it. No.
I'd have to agree.
Angelina isn't Lara Croft. I really like the rebooted Lara Croft in the new game.
Right.
I really like that reboot. I really like where they're going with her character.
No, I agree.
You know what I
I think the reboot was really awesome.
It was fantastic, and
I think
she's cool.
I think that's going to spawn a stronger generation of female.
Ooh, Samus. That's a good point.
Yeah, Samus.
I'm not going to say what Alupina is saying, but Samus.
Yeah.
All right. Dude, you guys. So
Awesome.
let's
Switch it
what
up.
else
we wanna talk about?
What else do we want to talk about? Do we want to go over a few other games? Probably not. Let's see. I have
Maybe
a
turn it into
few.
a game.
I have a few.
I've got some
things.
more, but I think
I've got more too.
they merit more. You know,
Yeah, more discussion.
a little bit more time for discussion on the games.
Right. Well, we have a few topics. Maybe I'm not sure any of these we would want to talk about, but we did talk about iOS and mobile gaming. That was a topic we might want to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
Something we could talk about in lieu of Valentine's Day, feminism. I doubt that correlates.
Yeah.
Mods, gaming hardware advancements. I guess we just pick the topic and let's go for it. Otherwise, if anyone has anything in chat, which I doubt they have anything interesting to say.
We're talking about.
No, they have
letters.
interesting things to say. Just
They're very
Amongst
interesting. I just don't
not
want to
things
talk
we're
about
going to talk about.
You guys.
I like the chatter.
Yeah,
I don't
do
wanna-
too.
Guys,
That's
if you want to talk about what you're talking about, make sure you hit that follow button. It'll be much better conversations. if
You
hit
know-
that
you know,
follow.
Hitting
okay.
the follow button will give you an extra inch.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, Van Sweetie is talking a little bit about Lara Croft now, some more, and he said that as a character, the rebooted Lara Croft is quite nice. The game itself didn't feel much like Tomb Raider anymore,
I kind of get what he's coming from. It
I
kind
did-
of
it
felt
did-
like a survival game.
and I think that was the point. I think they're building something else. Obviously, the new game coming out is Rise of the Tomb Raider. I think they're going
Yeah.
to focus a lot more on who she is as a Tomb Raider.
Right.
The Tomb Raider game, the Tomb Raider reboot, yes, it's a survival game. She's not raiding tombs. She's not there specifically to raid tombs. She's there to survive. And I think that was kind of the point of the game. So yeah, I agree with what he's saying. It doesn't feel like a Tomb Raider game.
Mm-hmm.
What?
No, go.
Keep going. Keep going.
We'll get to it. We'll get to it.
You know, but I think they are building to something more in
yeah.
the vein of what Tomb Raider is.
Yeah.
You know, of who she is
Well,
as
that's
that character.
an interesting discussion. You know, do we feel like games need to be encapsulated in and of themselves? Like, let's talk about Halo. You know, Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3. They kind of all flow together. You know, you in order to understand the complete story, you have to play all of them. And I think there's more of a trend in gaming now where they're expecting there to be a series.
Mm-hmm.
They're expecting there to be more games. So they're not really telling complete stories.
Right.
Where, you know, you played, like, Lufia 2. I could play that game. I don't have to play the other Lufia games to get the story. I mean, they're nice and they add to the lore and everything. But Lufia 2 was a complete experience in and of itself, as opposed to, say, you know, Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3 for the greatness that was Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 3, it definitely was leading into the events of 3. What are your thoughts on that?
Concur.
Is that a good trend? Is that a bad trend? What do you guys think?
I don't know. In some aspects, it is a good trend. In others, I think it's a little bit almost kind of like a cop out. If you build a game and not give it an ending because you're going to cover it in a sequel, I think that's kind of poor storytelling.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I'm okay with sequels. I'm okay with leaving threads open to revisit, but I think a game should tell a story. Movies as well. You know, I don't like seeing movies where they leave it open at the end, you know, the to be continued type ending. I don't like that. Wow. Leave the threads there so you can get creative with your storytelling to bring a sequel into play later on.
Yeah.
But tell a story.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and there's a difference between having loose ends and mystery in a game and blatantly saying there's going to be another one. Like even with like Lords of Shadow, which is a game I think we should need to talk about, the reboot of Castlevania. Yeah. Even at the end of that game, for the awesomeness that was that story, and you know, Gabriel was a very interesting character, and the ending and everything, it still felt like, okay, yeah, there's going to be another one. There's going to be another game. Because they had that cutscene with him at the end and in New York and everything, and I think that game would have been so much better had they ended it where it ended. You know, and I think from my, you know, I'm very much a literature person and I love reading books. There's definitely this trend towards people don't want to give up on IPs or on characters that they've invested. I mean, just look at like the Harry Potter series. We just can't let that go. They're making the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. She's talking about writing a sequel. There's we don't want to say goodbye to these characters. And I think about all of the characters that have affected me, the stories that have changed me as a person, is because there is a definite end to them. I mean, thinking about like Chrono Trigger, there was the sequel Chrono Cross, but it wasn't a sequel in the sense that it was a sequel. It was just in the same universe. Chrono Cross was definitely, this is the story and that's the end, and it was an experience. Where I feel like we're kind of getting gypped on these games that are coming out, with the intent of producing 5-10 more,
right.
Because we don't get that complete experience. Even in the game that's supposed to be the end, Mass Effect 3, how the uproar that was that ending, I just feel like there was so much missing. They had done all of this build up, and everybody really wanted to know the ending, and then it was a complete letdown. Where if they had tried to tell that story in one game, the complete story of Commander Shepard, I think it would have been more poetic, so to speak.
Yeah, I think not everyone. We're seeing chat like, do you play for gameplay, story, or otherwise? Well, before we move on to that one, which I think is an excellent question.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Really, we can see movies doing that more and more, like Maze Runner. Maze Runner, the book, was actually really interesting and good. However, the movie for me was a letdown because it led up to so much, and then it was like, bam, there's a new movie, and they let all the secrets out, so.
And even to that extent, I think the reason why the Batman movies did such an amazing job is because the Dark Knight series,
right?
The Christopher Nolan movies,
the Nolan trilogy.
They tell very, very complete stories. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's the same character, but he's presented with different challenges, and there isn't much carryover between them. And I think that's why they were so successful. Because you didn't watch Batman Begins and it ended and say, all right, now I'm waiting for Batman Begins again.
It left you wanting more.
Yeah, exactly.
And it brought it in a smart way. But it still told a good, complete story. But it left these overarching story threads that could be revisited at a later time. And I think that's important.
For sure. Sorry, I was laughing. Alo Lapina, 1988 comment. Can't believe they changed the Tetris movie name to 50 Shades of Grey. Classic. That was a great one. Definitely a highlight for me of this chat.
I'd have to say, let's ask the question: gameplay or story?
Story.
Story for me, definitely.
For us three, it's very clear. I'm gameplay, but I think we have inklings of everything, of course, but definitely have a division. So, which is good.
Yeah, which is fine.
It's the reason why we're all three here.
It gives alternate, different viewpoints,
and that's why cool. In the chat we have a diverse comedy section. Because
comedy section, I like that.
They all.
We were talking about romances a little bit earlier. I think we got one in the making here with, we've got Ali Pina, 1988, and a Twitch username. I mean, they're giving each other the shout outs.
Yes.
I think there's a little
matchmaking
going on.
Yep.
That's what we do here.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this... I don't want to say games need to be a cinematic experience. They don't. And I don't even know that story is the right word for me. I am very much a character person. I am driven by these characters. You can't have a character without a story. But for me, I identify more with the character than with the plot.
Yeah. Well, and I guess looking at it at games I like to play, obviously you like to play Mario Brothers and stuff like that, and there isn't really a story per se. You know, there's the basic plot parameters. You know, but at the same time, I don't like jumping into a game where all of a sudden I'm in this world doing stuff with no reason. Like, I like to have a sense of why I'm doing these things, and so in that sense, I like story over gameplay.
Yeah.
You know, it's why I didn't really like Destiny that much, because there's not a lot going on other than
the gameplay.
You go down to a planet, you run around, shoot a bunch of things, and then you go back to your ship and go to another planet.
And then go to a raid or whatever.
Yeah, go to a raid or something like that. But it's very enclosed. It's very...
Although,
there's not a lot of...
You know, MMOs have really, really kind of done a bad job at tying in story. However, the big exception there is World of Warcraft. You still have a story with immense amounts of gameplay, and even when the new expansions come out, they in and of themselves have a storyline. You know, Pandora was very interesting right from the start, and the gameplay just tied beautifully into it. Although it was really hard to find the storyline because you did have to catch the right quests and you could break it easily. But regardless, you know, I think if it's not a single player game, if it's not World of Warcraft, you know, it's really hard to retain any sort of storyline, which is kind of a shame, honestly.
You know, I kind of disagree with you. I mean, Team Fortress 2, there's not much of a story there other than two teams fighting, but it's still, you still identify with your character, right? I mean, when I play the Engineer, isn't it? The Engineer? Isn't that one of the classes? Yeah. I don't play very often. But when I do play, that's what I play as, because I identify with that character, you know. And even though there's not a story, I'm still experiencing something with that game. Right. I know, you know, the gameplay is great and everything, but it's a multiplayer game where I am taking something away from it. So yeah, I mean, there's not really a plot
dedicated,
but I still think that there is an experience to have in those games.
Yeah.
Cool.
All up in ya. Thank you for clarifying that.
I kind of not sure if that's actually, you know, that could be it. Well,
that's what he said. He said, by the way, my name is All Up in Ya.
Oh, okay. All Up in Ya, 1988.
It's for when he gets killed in a shooter, so that the game says so and so was shot by All Up in Ya.
Yeah. That's genius.
Dude, you're clever. I hope you hit that follow button. We need more clever people in here.
I like that. You know, but he's talking...
Nailed it.
A little bit back, he was talking about the Zelda games. You know, he said that he's always loved them, but he just realized the other day that the story is crap. Yeah. You know, and I think we were kind of touching on this a little bit. Yeah, the storyline is similar across all the Zelda games. Yeah. But if you look at it in the sense of that it's a legend, there's differences in each game, but it's all the basic same story. But it's just being retold in different iterations.
Exactly.
And I kind of like that approach to it. You know, it's a very simple story, and it's not, I wouldn't say it's the best story out there, but it's a cool little take on it. And if you can look at it through that idea of that it is a legend, it's going to be told different ways by different people.
Exactly.
So
I think, you know, again, you guys are the story fanboys, so I don't know if I'm talking out of context here, but I think Zelda's story, and at least going back to Ocarina of Time, it is simplistic enough and deep enough that you can play it over and over again, any part of it, and be memorable. It's not like, wow, this was a tragedy, you know, and it's like, that's all I can remember now. It's like, you know, thinking about it right now, I can think about any part of that game, not just because I've played it so much, but, you know, going back to the story sort of thing, it was always intriguing in its little perspective areas. So, and I think that's what sets Zelda apart for sure, versus something like Heavy Rain or something deep, very deep. That's like, whoa, you know, that was hard to take. I don't know if I could play that again. So.
Right. All Up in Ya, we actually discussed the Netflix Zelda
A couple weeks ago.
a couple of weeks ago. So if you go watch, I think our first stream,
We did discuss that
talked
quite a
about
bit.
it.
What our thoughts on that were.
our first video, we discussed.
But watch out for the failed attempts to game capture.
Yeah.
And you'll see those are game capture tests. We didn't do a very good job of those, but the first actual video of us talking, we discussed the Legend of Zelda live action.
Yeah.
So I
Well.
think it's getting pretty late for us, and I'm sure it's all late for you guys. But would you guys concur? We've had a really good stream.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, it's been well.
You know, I've really liked the chatter that,
Yeah.
Yeah, please come back next time. You guys are hilarious.
yeah, you guys are great.
And speaking of that, our next one is going to be...
Wednesday.
Unfortunately, we're going to have a separation. So over Valentine's Day, our heart goes out to you, but join us Wednesday.
Yep.
At 8?
Eight.
We still doing 8?
We doing
8 Mountain Time.
8 Mountain Standard Time. So please join us. Please hit that follow button and
Yay, Jalapeno followed us.
yeah, I'll open you.
Just really quick though, I mean, Jalapeno said that he can't go back because he's on Xbox One. Our general thoughts on the Netflix Zelda was we really hope that they don't try to recreate a Zelda storyline.
Right.
Because we think that they would be just doing a disservice to the franchise, but rather come up with a unique way of telling the Zelda story, like maybe a life and a civilian of people in the world or something. We really wouldn't want to see Link as the main character. Basically, was our summary of our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
So.
Van Sweeties.
Yeah, let's go ahead and,
I like that
answer
question.
that.
So he
question.
asked, what's the first game you ever played? I would have to say, I don't know. That's tough because
that's a tough
I
one.
remember as a kid going to a pizzeria. It was called Joe's Pizzeria, and I always played Frogger. And they had a Mario game there, but it wasn't the Mario Bros. It was the one where you were battling, throwing the shells at each other. I remember playing those, and I don't know if that came before because I also remember playing Empire Strikes Back on the Atari as well as Pitfall. So that's all kind of runs
my
together.
first game, and I think it very much informed my education as a gamer, was Adventure on Atari, where you were just a little block and there was the dragon and you were running around trying to find the key. Cool. Great game, great simplistic fantasy game, but definitely that was my first experience with gaming.
It really is interesting. The first game kind of defines the future. Maybe that's the case or not. But mine, ironically, it was a DOS game that my dad loaded up on his computer, and your mouse was the target, and you shot cans and stuff. It was a shooting gallery.
Nice.
And I'm a fanboy of FPSs, so. I think that's kind of a little bit of irony.
Yeah.
That my favorite genre is that.
That's cool. Well, we've got some good ones out there.
Super Mario Land for Game Boy.
That's a good one.
Oh man,
I like that game.
That was
Toe Jam and
good
Earl
one.
is fun. You have to funkify everything.
Yes. Half-Life also.
Half-Life, it's a good jumping on point.
Yes.
So all up in ya, we're going to be Wednesdays dedicated and
Friday or
Saturdays.
Friday, Saturday. We're working on our consistency, but definitely keep us followed so that you can know when exactly. But we're gonna hit up the weekends, especially for you, dude. So
Definitely.
So definitely join us, and bring your friends, of course.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please
So-
do. Please.
And of course, Snake.
Snake.
Snake, it's
Yeah,
everywhere.
It was on the phones.
It's the pack-in.
Yes.
So,
And eventually we will be actually playing games.
Yeah.
yeah, on
We're
stream.
We're just
We're
trying to
still
figure, as you'll
troubleshooting.
see in our history, we had a failed attempt at game capture, but we will definitely get it figured out and do it.
Right.
So
Yes.
Cool.
All right. Again, thank you, everyone. Now, just to let you know, we will be playing some special song at the end and start of our stream. It's from our friends at Super Guitar Bros, and they usually play late at night, almost every night. Assumingly that's true. check them out. They're in the music section of Twitch. But we want to thank you all again. And
it's been fun.
Yes. We will update our topic of what we will do next time. And also we will update when it is so that you can refer back to that.
Definitely.
But until next time, you guys keep it safe. And
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day. And enjoy the Zelda song that's going to turn on right now. So, all right. Everyone say bye.
Bye.
See ya.